Today's episode is all about broccoli. Welcome back to At the Table. Sydney here, and I have finally returned from my maternity leave. A little bit thinner than I was last time you guys saw me. But today we are going to be talking all about broccoli. So broccoli is a very popular crop as we get into these cooler months. When the winter starts happening. Now, we don't grow a ton of broccoli here in Sampson County, but it is still readily available to us and very affordable, which is key, especially in these times if we're trying to find food that's a little bit more affordable while we're in the grocery store. Finding things that are in season, whether it's in your county, state or not, a lot of times these will be even more affordable. So same thing, you think about apples. Apples are a little bit more affordable during the fall. However, we don't grow a ton of apples here in Sampson County. So this is a great vegetable to choose, and I've got a couple different options for you today as well in how you can buy that. So what we're gonna do, we're making a broccoli and cheddar casserole to start with. And the great thing about this is you can use fresh broccoli or use frozen broccoli. So our recipe actually calls for frozen broccoli, but since it is in season, I thought I'd grab the fresh. And with this recipe, it does ask for it to be thawed anyways. So if you have the time to chop up that fresh broccoli, definitely go for it. You don't have to chop it super fine. And it shouldn't take you too much time to take care of that. So if you noticed when I was cutting the broccoli, and I'll show you guys that on the next crown that we have, whenever I cut broccoli, I turn it over and then I just slice off the top pieces. Now, you can save that entire stem and you can use that for stock, for soup. You can cut it up really fine and you can add it to salads. So just because the stem doesn't have any of the little green florets on it does not mean you have to throw it away. You can absolutely still eat that, save it for later. You could put it in a food processor and it would still be healthy and delicious for you. So I'm just chopping this up into smaller pieces. And we want about 1 pound of broccoli. And we're just gonna throw this into a big bowl that we're gonna mix everything in together later on. This is a pretty simple recipe. It doesn't have a whole lot to it. So we'll be making 2 recipes today for that reason. All right, so I like to just take these little green leaves off. It's just something I always do at first. You don't necessarily need to do that if you're only using the crowns, but if you want to save that stem, you definitely want to chop off those leaves. So if you just take your knife, and I just work my way around. Now this is the same thing as when we do cauliflower, and you just kind of work your way around that crown. And then this doesn't have to be perfect because it's all gonna be kind of thrown together into a big casserole. So I'm just chopping it kind of any way I please. Whenever I do it in the oven, I like to leave it in these larger pieces like this and just throw it onto a baking sheet and roast it that way. So oven-wise, I still cut it off the crown the same exact way, but then I don't chop it further. I just kind of leave it as it is and add some olive oil and whatever seasonings you like, and it's good to go. So one of the reasons why we like broccoli and why it's a healthy choice for us is because broccoli is loaded with lots of different vitamins. So calcium is one of those that broccoli tends to have a lot of. And calcium is something that helps to keep our bones nice and strong. So a lot of times we think about calcium being in our dairy products, but actually broccoli has a good amount of calcium as well. So it's a really healthy choice if you're trying to build strong bones, which we should all be trying to do. All right, so there's our broccoli. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and finish our onion and do some garlic, and we'll get this rolling.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Hey guys, welcome back. So I went ahead and started cutting into our onion. Whenever I cut my onions, I always slice them in half, and then I go ahead and start to cut those ridges down, and then you can turn it and cut it all the other direction. And then that way you've already got diced onions. Makes it much easier, and you can get done with it more quickly. Once I get to a spot where it's kind of difficult to cut, I just turn it, just keep turning it a couple times until I get it cut all the way. Then I usually just run my knife back through and make sure it's kind of where I want it to be. So we are gonna actually cook this onion, and then we're gonna also put in a little bit of garlic. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of butter here. Now you could absolutely use olive oil if you're trying to watch that. However, there is a lot of vegetables in this, and we're really not adding a ton of butter. So I don't think it could hurt to use butter here if you prefer to do that. I'm making a mess. So we're gonna cook that up with that garlic, and we just wanna cook our onions until they're translucent. I need a little bit bigger of a pot, I believe, but this'll work. And I'm gonna cheat today and use the pre-minced garlic, just because it's what we had here at the office and I didn't wanna have to buy more. So you can always use whatever you have on hand. If you don't have garlic at all, you could do garlic powder if you would just rather do that. It's not gonna be nearly as strong. So if you have anybody in your family who doesn't like it when you eat garlic, then you can just go that route, and maybe it won't be as strong to them. Okay, and we're gonna do 2 teaspoons of this. So each teaspoon is equal to a clove of garlic. I feel like the minced garlic in the jar is not nearly as strong and flavorful as the fresh garlic. So keep that in mind. You might want to up that a little bit. Of course, just adjust it to taste, whatever sounds good to you. So I'm gonna stir that up and crank up our temperature here, and then we are gonna add some things to our broccoli. So we have, it's a broccoli, rice, and cheese. So we're gonna add, I did some brown rice here that I went ahead and cooked ahead of time, and we need about 4 cups of rice. So I cooked 2 cups, usually it doubles. We'll see how well I did here. And we're just gonna mix all of this together to put into our 9x9 pan. Now, we didn't have a 9x9 here, so we're using an 8x8, and that'll be okay. I'm just gonna try to maybe not fill it as much into our dish. I think I'm right on the money with our 4 cups. We'll just use the rest of this. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna add is some cheese. So I have 2 cups of cheddar cheese here. We wanna use about 1.5 cups. So use almost all of the cheese. The last half of a cup we're gonna use to go on top of our casserole. So save a little bit to top it with, and that'll make it look really pretty once it's done cooking as well. So we're just gonna mix this up. Until it's all mixed together. Now this recipe doesn't have any meat in it, so this would be a really good side dish, especially if you're trying to think of some ideas for the holidays coming up that's maybe a more affordable recipe. This recipe is actually from budgetbites.com. So I actually get their email, their weekly email that they send out, and have tons of different recipes, and they're all budget friendly. So they are a little bit more affordable, and you can always adjust those to your preference. So if you would rather, like I said, use olive oil instead of butter, or this recipe said brown rice or white rice, and we're doing brown rice here, to just make it a little bit more healthy or nutritious. But you absolutely don't have to do that either. You don't have to adjust the recipes. You can follow it exactly how it is. So that's all blended together nicely, and once we start cooking, it will look really good. And we still need a couple more minutes on our onions. We want these to be translucent. So we want to cook them until they are about see-through, and they're close but not quite there. The rest of our ingredients that we're gonna be adding, we're gonna put it all into this pot, is gonna be some flour. So we've got 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and we've got 2 cups of milk. The recipe does call for a higher fat milk, so I would suggest doing at least 2% if you're gonna choose a higher fat. And then we have a little bit of seasoning, so salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little bit of paprika. So we're gonna get these onions going. I'm gonna go ahead and start adding this stuff to it as well once it's done, and we'll see you guys back in just a minute.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
All right, welcome back, guys. So we have our onions done, and I've also went ahead and added our flour to that. Next, I'm gonna add our milk. I try not to spill it all over the place. And we're just gonna whisk that, and hopefully it'll kind of start to thicken here in just a minute. And we wanna let that cook for about 2 minutes to thicken. So that's got our onions, our garlic, a little bit of butter, flour, and then our milk that we have added to that as well. As far as our broccoli and rice and cheese, I went ahead and added that to our pan. I did a little bit bigger of a pan just because I noticed we had a lot of food, and I just did not feel like it would fit in that 8x8. Our recipe called for a 9x9, which we didn't have. So really whatever pan you have that will work. You could even do a larger pan. It just might not be as full. And that's perfectly okay. So we're gonna let this thicken up, and then once it's ready, we're gonna pour this all over our broccoli and cheese. I'm gonna go ahead and begin to season this as well. So this is kind of like our sauce for our broccoli and cheese casserole. So we've got just a little bit of paprika, probably about half a teaspoon. Now you can adjust this to your preference. So whatever you enjoy and your family enjoys, kind of go that route, and you can taste this as it's cooking to make sure that it's flavorful enough for your family. This is cayenne. I'm not gonna do too much of that, about 1/4 teaspoon, just because cayenne gets really, really hot. And then we have salt and pepper. So just remember, this is going all over our entire dish, which we have not seasoned yet. So all the spices are going to be dispersed amongst the entire dish. So it's okay to get a little bit heavier handed because we do want to have some of that good flavor going throughout. I did a little extra pepper there. Okay, so I'm going to turn this up just a little bit, and we want this to begin to simmer. Got a little pepper in my throat there. So while this is doing its thing, we're going to go over to work on our rice noodles. So our pot is boiling, and we have some of the wider rice noodles. Now this is the Thai Kitchen brand. It was the only brand that my grocery store had. So whatever brand you can find is great. We're just going to throw these in, and then I'll kind of stir them in as they start to go down. And I'm just going to do about half of this package. It says 7 ounces, so we're just eyeballing here. And this should cook, it should probably take about 4 or so minutes. So it doesn't take long at all for your rice noodles to cook. That might be a little much, but we're feeding the whole gang here, so we need plenty. All right. So I'll set that to the side, and I'll just give that a quick little stir in there. So we're gonna let that boil for 3 or 4 minutes or so until that is fully cooked. So while that's boiling, we're gonna come over to our mushrooms. Now it's a mushroom and broccoli stir fry recipe. So another great way for you to use broccoli, we're using frozen broccoli actually. So our frozen broccoli, it's just half a pound of frozen broccoli. I like to buy the ones that are cut up already. So make sure that you are reading the package. There's a couple different types of frozen broccoli when you're looking in the grocery store. Some of it is just the florets. Some of it is the entire, kind of the larger pieces. And then you'll see the one that says cut. Personally, that's the one I like to go for because y'all know I like things in smaller pieces, and that makes it easy. I don't then have to cut it up myself. So I'm cutting up some mushrooms. We've got 8 ounces of just those white mushrooms. And then we're going to be making our own stir fry sauce over here as well. You can hear those noodles boiling. Those don't take nearly as long as regular pasta. They're a lot thinner, and just the rice in general cooks a little bit more quickly. So we're gonna finish up cooking these cutting up these mushrooms, and then we'll see you guys back to finish up these 2 recipes.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
All right, we have our broccoli and cheese and rice casserole all done. So on the top, you see the onions, and as we poured it over, some of that sauce kind of drips down into, deeper into your pot, or your pan. So what we're gonna do next is add some cheese. So this is about half of a cup of cheese. I feel like you could definitely add a little more if you want to, or just as you are using the cheese earlier in the dish, you could just do more of like a cup on top if you wanted to. You don't need a ton. Obviously, there's gonna be plenty of cheese inside the dish as you begin to cook it and it starts to melt. So we're gonna throw this into the oven, 350 for about 35 minutes. So it does cook for a little while. All right, so the next thing that we are gonna do is we are gonna work on our stir fry. So I have our mushrooms and garlic already done over here. I put some sesame oil into a pan. You could use any oil. Sesame oil can be a little bit pricey, but I love sesame oil. It has really good flavor. So I've got mushrooms, garlic. We're gonna throw this into our pan to saute all together. And you wanna make sure that your pan is good and hot before you add in your mushrooms and garlic. And you see how I am using the back of my knife as I scrape our ingredients into our pan. That will help to keep my knife from dulling. So we always want to use the back and not the top of the blade. All right, so that should be good enough. And we'll kind of stir this around, and then I'm going to go ahead and work on our sauce. And as far as how much oil I added, it's about a tablespoon of oil in there. So the next thing we're gonna do is add our ingredients for our sauce. So we're gonna do 1/4 cup of soy sauce. Now our recipe called for a chili garlic sauce, which looks like it is a homemade sauce. At Food Line, I found a chili sauce, and we've already got garlic in our mushrooms and onions, our mushrooms mixture, so I feel like it'll be okay without the garlic. We're just gonna use this and see how it is. So I'm just gonna see if we can get this out. Ooh. We want about a tablespoon of that. And then we're gonna do a little bit of brown sugar, so this will help to sweeten it up some. I'm just gonna keep eyeballing this, guys, so. That should be about a tablespoon. And we're also going to do a little bit of sesame oil and cornstarch. So this ends up being about a tablespoon of oil. Again, sesame oil has that really good flavor. It just smells completely different than your regular cooking oil, but you can do anything here that you like. And our cornstarch. So here we need just 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. That'll be kind of our thickening agent. All right, so our mushrooms are looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in our broccoli. Now that was frozen. I have had it sitting out for a little bit, so it's not quite as frozen as it would have been straight from the freezer. But you just want to heat it up a little bit, just enough to kind of get it nice and green. Keep it nice and green, but don't let it necessarily start to get all mushy and too cooked down. We're just stirring that up. And then I'm going to mix up our sauce here. And this is just a different spin for you on your typical stir-fry recipe. So we've got the chili sauce, that's a little different. Now you can make this your own. You could absolutely do your own sauce and just do broccoli, mushrooms, or any other vegetables that you enjoy with some rice noodles, and I think it would be just as delicious. Remember that recipes are never rules. You can always make these two the way that you prefer them. So I'm gonna cut up some green onions here. And that's about it. I mean, this is very simple, and that's all that we really needed for this recipe. So last thing is we're gonna add those noodles to our pan that we cooked earlier. probably won't add all of these noodles just because I did Went a little overboard with how much we made, but we'll do about half of these. They are very sticky. Our rice noodles tend to be a little bit more sticky than your traditional noodles too. And I'm gonna add our sauce, and that'll help to kind of separate the noodles as well. It smells good, looks good. It's gonna be so tasty. Can't wait to try it. You could add chicken to this. You could add pork. I think pork tenderloin would be really good and still a very lean option. Or you could do steak as well. So whatever you and your family enjoys. You're gonna let that cook and simmer for just about 2 minutes or so to help it cook down and let the flavors kind of meld, and it's done. So top it with your green onions before serving, and it is ready to go. So these are just some couple simple ways for you to use up broccoli this winter. Remember that you always have frozen broccoli available. It's very affordable. That's always going to be accessible to you any time of year. So you could really make either of these recipes anytime. Let me know if you try them, and we will see you guys back next time on At the Table.